Wikity has the sort of problem Twitter had early on, in that the biggest problem is not that it's hard to use. The biggest problem is that people just don't understand what you would use it for. I'm going to start at the end here. I'm going to start with my site, which I've been writing things on, maybe 2 or 3 things a day since November, and show you how it looks and how you can use it. So I have a site and I have all these, whenever I research a topic or have a question, I write a short little page on it. And the page starts with a summary of what the page is about, usually has some additional information. And then I link it to some other pages I've written, some other ideas. And each page is really about a thing or an idea or a piece of data. That is, I'm not using these pages to make arguments about this thing being right or that thing being right or why you should agree with me. In general, I'm just trying to capture data or capture an idea or capture a description of a thing. So I can type in here any number of things. We can type design, right? We can see design here. We can click into these and edit them right here if we want, right? So actually looking at this, Joel Splosky wrote something about how UI has to suggest the use to the user without the use of a manual. And actually that's kind of very similar to this idea of Norman doors. Norman doors are doors that suggest the opposite of what you should do with them. So, if you've ever tried to pull a door with an obvious pull handle when you were meant to push it in, that's a Norman door. So why don't we just go down here and I'll just say a good example of this from architecture is Norman doors. And this is really the core of what you do in here. You maintain a library of ideas which you connect with one another. And so now whenever I look at Joel's 2 observations, it'll remind me, oh, there's this other thing over here that's related that talks about the problem of Norman doors, right? And through that, I can get to this idea of discoverability in design. And we can do this for anything. We kind of use this as an augmentation of our own intellect to show us not only the ideas that we're looking for or the answers we're looking for, but to remind us of the things that we wouldn't otherwise remember, right? So this is something on sexist architecture. It talks about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and how when she originally went to law school, there were no bathrooms for women in the law school. And this is her sexist architecture, right? And it put an incredible burden on the women that were trying to work in those buildings. But it's linked here to this article here on policy through bridge height, which is this fascinating thing I came across. Robert Caro discusses how a mayor actually built bridges intentionally low so that buses, which were the main transport of Black people, could not get certain places in the city. And so this idea of sexist architecture, the building without the woman's room, relates to this idea of enforcing really a racist policy through bridge height. Over time, you build this rich network of links where you can look at any issue and kind of crawl through it and remind yourself. Even just putting in a term here allows me to go through and just refresh my memory on some of the stuff I know about that. Term, right? Okay, but let's look at what the daily practice of this is. Usually, my practice starts on Twitter. Actually, there's this new essay that Michael Nielsen posted, and it's about mathematics and how we haven't really changed what we do with mathematics in the age of the computer. We're really working with the same systems of notation that we did in the paper age. I don't want to grab that piece. I might write an article on that, but I just want to grab this piece here. This right here is a segment of the article that talks about how in the 9th century people began to experiment with different forms of music notation. And initially, it was a way to record music that was played. But of course, what happens with any medium is it starts off with a recording, and then it becomes a new way of thinking about the medium. It becomes a medium within itself. And so you can't get Beethoven's symphonies without musical notation, right? Beethoven's symphonies and that way of thinking about music can only come about once you actually have a notation which allows you to do it. So I'm going to go here and I'm just going to paste this in. This is a quote from there, and it's marked down in the box. We're gonna block quote this, right? And since it's marked down in the box, we can take this. We can take that URL and just put it right there as a medium for thought. Okay, and let's just save this for the moment, and then we'll edit it a little more. Okay. Now I still have this sexism thing going on up there. So we have this. Now I have this middle part here, but I'm missing the beginning and I'm missing the end. So first, let's write what we call a synopsis here. This is going to be the first couple lines of it that just summarizes why we think this is interesting. I'm just going to say music notation created in the 9th century took a long time to change how music was composed. Eventually, it led to new ways of thinking about music. Right? So this is our synopsis. This is our summary. Just going to save that. And then I know that I have something about Gutenberg and printing and how printing changed the ways we thought of things, right? So this age of the incunable. And so this is an article that talks about how when Gutenberg first invented printing, all his people really did was look, they recreated the script of books. They recreated something that looked very much like the books that they were making by hand. And the arguments that those books could propose and the way those books could talk about things was no different than the books that had been created by hand. However, the printing press and the idea of broadly disseminating texts eventually had this huge impact on thought. We started thinking in different ways. And so we get finally to Copernicus about 70 years later, right? You start to see Copernicus, you start to see Luther, and they're making these arguments that would be impossible to make just verbally, impossible to make in a purely oral way. Diagrams, and there's references, and there's these long sentences and explanations and mathematical equations that just would not have been possible to disseminate in this previous form, right? And so we start to think in a print way. Anyway, that's what that is about. And the syntax we use is we just put a little horizontal rule there and mark down, and then we say age of the incunable with print. And we're still keying off this Gutenberg search. I also noticed this thing here, Voyager Expanded Books, and I remember that that's actually kind of interesting. That's the idea of creating books, digital books that did more than just transcribe books. And I think actually I might like a link to that down here at the bottom of Age of the Incunable, right? So Voyager. As a matter of fact, the social book link okay, so we'll add that there. And sometimes I just go on a little streak, you know, so I might just put in a book or something like that and just see if there's anything. So this Peter James host, let's grab that, and I think we want to we go back and we do this, and over time, again, what we get is we get this large interrelated set of cards that we can use to help think about things. Oh, and you can fork things too. So let me just show you how that works. Like say we have a wiki here called new. So we have this new wiki, and we want to put something from Rainy Streets in it. So if I want to push this one over into new wiki, just go down here and I type new wiki, and it'll copy it over here, and you'll see that I now have it over here. And so that's the bigger idea, maybe a little too complex to fit in this video, but the eventual idea is you start pulling stuff from other people's card files too, and then connecting it to your own stuff.